Hello students, welcome all of you at AriserTalent. How are you all? I hope you are doing absolutely well. So we were on this third chapter of the class 10th chemistry, that is metals and non-metals, and in our previous lecture we have dealt about the metallurgy, what exactly the metallurgy is. Metallurgy is actually the branch of science that basically deals with the extraction of the metals and the methods of refining them. And the process of metallurgy actually depends upon the three factors, that what will be the nature of the mineral, what will be the nature of the ore, and what are the type of the impurities present in it. Now in our today's lecture we are going to deal with the basic steps that are involved in the metallurgical process. So in the process of metallurgy, the first step that is very much regarded is, first is grinding and crushing of ore, second is concentration and enrichment of the ore, third process will be obtaining the metal from that concentrated ore, and finally there will be the refining and the purification step. So I am writing these steps one by one here, and we will deal with the different methods in this category. So our topic is basic steps in extraction of metal. So the most important basic methods in the extraction of the metal involves first will be grinding and crushing of ore. Our second step will be concentration and enrichment of ore. The third factor actually includes extracting metal from ore. And the last step will be refining and purification of the metal. Students, here are the four basic techniques that are regarded with the metallurgical process. First one is grinding and crushing of ore. Second is concentration and enrichment of ore. Third factor is extracting the metal from its carbonate or ore. Last one is refining and purification step. So these processes involve different kind of method, and we are dealing with these type of the method, and this topic is very much important from your exam point of view, board as well as competitive exam point of view. So our first step is grinding and crushing of ore. As we know that the ores that are obtained to us from the nature are in the form of the rocks, and these rocks are so heavy, so we have to convert it into the crushed form, and these crushed particles are then converted into the powdered form with the help of the ball mill or stamp mill. So the first step will be grinding and crushing of ore. So we are dealing with all the steps one by one. Our first step is grinding and crushing of ore. So what will actually happen in this process? The ores that are obtaining from the earth crust are actually in the form of the rocks. So what will happen next? rocks are converted into the crushed particles, and these crushed particles are further converted into the powdered form. These are the basic steps involved in first grinding and crushing process. So this will be our simpler flow chart to understand this type of criteria. Now, this process is basically done with the help of the ball mill and the stamp mill. Firstly, the process of crushing is done, and the second step in the metallurgical process will be the pulverizing of the ore. So this can be done by using ball mill or stamp mill. So what actually happens, we will understand this with the help of a diagram. So in this diagram, we can see here we are having a lump of the rocks. This lump of the rocks are sent to a crusher. In this crusher, with the help of the crushing machine that is called mill, this is converted into the crushed type ores. The crushed type ores are not needed in much quantity. We want a ore in a powdered form. So in powdered form, we will get only by the help of the ball mill or stamp mill. So this first step is basically the crushing of ore. So the step 1 is crushing of ore. Now, second step in the metallurgical process will be, that is step number 2, that is called pulverizing of ore. So in the second step of grinding and crushing of ore, pulverizing is done. This is basically done in the stamp mill. Now, in the second diagram, we have seen that in the step 1, we have crushed the ore. The crushed ore is going to the stamp mill, and in this stamp mill, gangue particles are separated individually in a container over here, and the pulverized ore that is in the powdered form is obtaining at the bottom of the container. So in both the scenarios, we can see that the grinding and the crushing of ore is basically the 2 steps. First step is crushing of the ore with the help of a mill, and second is by using ball mill or stamp mill, we are doing the pulverizing of the ore. So you can copy the first step from here, so we can proceed to our next step. Now, step number 2 after grinding and crushing of ore is known as concentration or enrichment of the ore. Concentration or enrichment of the ore basically define removing the gangue particles, that is impurity, from the ores that are present in the ore, because the presence of the impurity will destroy the complete metal surface. So it is essential to remove the impurities from the metal. So the second steps here will be concentration and enrichment of ore. So concentration actually means removing the unwanted impurities, means removing gangue particles. So concentration and enrichment of the ore basically depends upon the three type of the methods. First method is hydraulic washing, that is washing the ore with water. Second method is froth flotation method, that is basically using oil plus water combination, and the third method is magnetic separation method. So we have the three methods here for the concentration of the ores, and the three methods are: first method is hydraulic washing. Second method we have froth flotation process. And third method we have the magnetic separation method. So now we will deal with all the three methods one by one. So hydraulic washing method is basically used to remove the impurities that are very heavy. For example, the many metals like lead, zinc, copper and iron are present in the heaviest form. So hydraulic washing is used to remove the heavy impurities. This method is basically depend upon the principle that there must be the difference in the density of the ore and density of the volatile impurities that is present in the method. Froth flotation process is basically dependent upon the difference in the weighting process of oil and water, and magnetic separation method is dependent upon the magnetic property of a material. So this method is essentially used for extracting the hematite ore. Basically it is an ore of an iron. So we will deal with all these methods one by one. So if our first category is hydraulic washing. First method is hydraulic washing. So in hydraulic washing method, the principle involved is there must be difference in the densities. Difference in density of ore and gangue particles. And this method is basically used for heavy metals because heavy metals can be removed by the hydraulic washing method. Now we will see the simplest diagram of hydraulic washing method, and these three methods are very important from board exam point of view. So what is the process involved in the hydraulic washing method? So this is the basic diagram for the hydraulic washing method. What actually happens in this process, the crushed ore has been substituted in the container, and with the help of a pump, water is supplied to the system, and when the water is supplied to the system, this crushed ore has been converted into the suspended ore, and the gangue particles are separated on the upper side, and the concentrated ore we will get on the lower side of the tank. These concentrated particles are obtained by the help of the water. So this method is basically used for heavy metals. Heavy metals like lead, tin, etc. can be separated from this type of the metal. So this is the basic diagram for the hydraulic washing method, and the principle involved here is there must be difference in the density of the ore and the volatile impurities. Because there is a difference in the densities, so it might be possible to differentiate them on the basis of the hydraulic washing method. So this is the main criteria of hydraulic washing method. So you can copy it from here. So we can proceed to our next topic, that is froth flotation method. So the next method is the froth flotation method, and the froth flotation method is basically based on the principle of the weighting properties of ore and impurities with oil and water. So this is the basic process involved here, and this method is basically used to separate the impurities which are less heavier than iron and other tin like metals, because these impurities can be removed only by the hydraulic washing method. So the froth flotation method is having a basic principle. The basic principle is difference in weighting properties of ore and impurities with oil and water respectively. So this is the basic method for the froth flotation process. Now we will understand the froth flotation method with the help of a simplest diagram. This method is very much important from your exam point of view. It is generally asked, explain froth flotation process. So you must have to keep it in the mind, so you can write it exactly as a principle involved with the systematic diagram of this situation. So this is a basic description for the Froth flotation method, and Froth flotation method is basically used for the concentration or enrichment of the sulfide ores. So it must be necessary to remember that this method is basically used for the concentration of sulfide ores. So this question may be asked in your 1 mark question type, that is, which method is mostly used for the concentration of the sulfide ore, and the correct answer will be Froth flotation method. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the Froth flotation method, and in this diagram we can see here we have taken a container which basically consists of a oil plus water plus ore. This oil is actually the pine oil we have used here. The oil we have used here is pine oil, and the compressed air is pumped into the tank. If compressed air is pumped into the tank, we can see here the froth containing ore plus oil plus water is transferred to the another tank. The gangue particles are settled at the bottom of the container, and after compressing air we can see that the concentrated ore which we needed in the must quantity is separated here, and we can see that the gangue particles are settled at the bottom of the container. So this is the main criteria for the Froth flotation method, and if the question is asked, we have to write the principle, second diagrammatic representation, and the actual working of this method. I hope this topic has been clear to you, so you can copy it from here, so we can proceed to our next method. Now our next method is, that is the last method for the concentration of the ore, and it is called magnetic separation method. Our next method is, that is third type, known as magnetic separation method. Now, as the name indicates, magnetic separation method is basically depends upon the principle when there will be some magnetic difference or the magnetic property difference between the ore and the gangue particles, and this method is actually used for iron, that is the hematite ore can be concentrated or enriched by this process. So what is the actual principle of this method? The principle involved here is, this method depends upon the difference in the magnetic properties of ore and gangue. Now we will see the diagrammatic representation for the magnetic separation method. So it has been clear to you that what actually the process is. Now, this is the basic method, that is magnetic separation method, which actually depends upon the magnetic property of the material. As I have already told you, this is used for the concentration of the iron, that is of the hematite ore, because it contains some sort of magnetic properties. Now, actually what happened in this process, firstly we have taken two strong electromagnets and they are attached to the conveyor belt. Now, what happens when the crushed ore is passed on this system, the conveyor belt moves, and the conveyor belt moves, it automatically separates the magnetic and non-magnetic particles into the two categories. So, we will get the two heaps here. One is that of the magnetic particle and one of the non-magnetic particle. As the concentrated ore rotates on this type of the electromagnetic system with the help of the conveyor belt, we will get the magnetic and non-magnetic substances in the individual manner. And this method is basically used for the concentration of hematite ore, and the hematite ore is the ore of iron. As the froth flotation method is used for the concentration of the sulfide ores, we have some type of the materials like copper, zinc and lead. They are extracted or they are concentrated with the help of the magnetic separation method. So, if we have the sulfides of three metals, that is iron, copper and lead. These three metals can be concentrated with the help of the magnetic separation method. So, this method is very beneficial for this type of the system. So, in the extraction of the methods, we have dealt with two type of the procedures, that is grinding and crushing of the ore. Second is concentration and enrichment of the ore. Now, we are left with the two methods, that what will be the refining criteria and what will be the extraction process. This we will deal with in our next lecture. Thank you so much and have a nice day.